Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This from a guy, sounds like he's in his early to mid 30s, and he's writing in looking not just for my help, but also your help as well, the community, with his best friend. You're going to see in this story, guys, that his friend is really in the marriage from hell, married to an awful gal that just treats him terribly, but also this guy is equally accountable for his life because this guy has truly behaved in the worst possible ways a weak guy can be. And he is really looking for, I'm really looking for some audience participation today to really help this guy out, because his friend is like his brother, best friend. He wants to help him, but obviously he has to question, can this friend even be helped, and what to do and all that. And you're going to see in this story, guys, that his friend rushed into a marriage with this woman, let her walk all over him, all these things I tell you not to do, she's done, and more. And it's so important, guys, as I say all the time, you must respect yourself. You must have self-respect and not let people walk all over you. And when you do, when you give somebody an inch, they'll take a yard, they'll take a mile even. And when it comes to women, if they don't respect you, they ain't gonna love you. And a lot will just treat you worse and worse and worse. And they'll keep you around because they want to have a husband or somebody there or for resources, and they'll just milk you for all it's worth. And if you aren't strong enough to not have somebody like this in your life, let alone kick them out, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. This is why I'm so crazy about self-improvement, self-improvement, self-improvement. Because when you're improving yourself and your life is better, you're feeling so good, you won't allow people like this into your life. And you won't put up with treatment when somebody who was once good started treating you like crap. Whoosh, you're done. Move on. So I'm going to go through this story here, guys. Definitely stay to the end. And then we can hopefully help this guy out, because both he and his friend definitely need help. And there are a lot of guys out there just like this. And so if this story here can help one guy out there, then it's worth my time doing this. And this is longer, I realize that, but it's worth the time. And I might add, guys, this is a story that'll show you what not to do and what can likely happen if you do these things, which you're going to see here. It says here, hello SSM. The story is about one of my closest friends and former college roommates. Let's call him Dan. For purpose of this story, you can call me Dave. We roomed together with my other good friend Mike in 2008-2009. Dan is one, if not one of my closest friends, and is always there for me and his other close friends. He's a good listener, but doesn't give a whole lot of advice. A bit non-confrontational. So right there, that's some foreshadowing of the future. Non-confrontational. Dan has always been a little different and extreme. We went to college about 90 minutes away from our hometown. All three of us are from the same metro area. Dan would go home every weekend except for one or two to work at the local grocery store and watch all the NFL games on Sunday Ticket. Sunday Ticket is on DirecTV, which isn't available on campus and at most college apartments because of the satellite dish. Dan worked at the grocery store since high school, and if he would have transferred to the local chain store in college, he would have lost his union seniority, pay cut, less frequent pay raises, less preferable shifts, etc. However, the cut would have been minor if he did it in 2004, his freshman year, but it was quite a different 4 years later. Anyway, I mentioned to say that Dan missed out on a lot of college parties, socialization, making friends, etc. He already doesn't have the best social skills, although he's a nice guy. Okay, so during college, he was away on the weekends working, which I respect. But he didn't do a lot of the, obviously, partying and all that, socializing, and obviously experience with women. So when a guy like this, who has a whole lot of experience with women, a woman starts paying attention to him, he tends to go all or nothing, overboard, and treat her like she's the only girl, and the only girl that will ever pay him attention, and you all know how that goes. He says here, I'm no chatter Tyrone, but I can hold a conversation and came into my own throughout college. Mike was the most social of us, of the three, and Mike and I played well off each other. He's a loud, abrasive, funny center of attention, and I have more of the quiet confidence, a bit more smooth and reserved. However, all three of us are relationship guys and got married early on. We know this doesn't coincide with your advice. While we have all had our challenges, Mike and my marriages are pretty good and happy, closing in on 13 and 11 years respectively. Dude, if you are happy in your marriage and you got a good thing going and your wife treats you with respect and she's affectionate and she's feminine and takes care of herself and she's supportive and all the things I say that are good qualities, then great. I'm happy for you. Just Remember everything you learned in this channel. Be a freaking man. Don't be a pussy. Don't kiss her butt. Be a leader in the relationship. Take charge. And if she treats you well, you treat her well. There you go. I'm happy for you. But if those things don't happen, then you might want to question your situation. Anyway, back to Dan. Dan and I catch up every Monday. He starts dating this gal, we'll call her Beth, that he went to high school with around January 2009. She's a couple years younger than us. Beth is a bright girl and graduated high school 2 years early at 16 years old. So she just finished college around this time at 20 or 21 and was back home getting on her feet. Everything seems fine for the first couple months or so. Well, that's how it usually works. It's called the honeymoon period. Then in the beginning of April, he mentions that he thinks that she's the one, and my eyes light up. After a few months of dating, this is where him not having a whole lot of experience in the dating scene or girls, and not being the most confident or sociable guy, is a problem. First girl pays attention to him, boom, I want to marry her. She's the one. It's ridiculous. He says he's not in a rush, but may propose next year. Smack. That sounds like a rush to me. What is he? He's in the early 20s. He just met her a few months. I think she's the one. I'm not in a rush, but I'm going to propose next year. That is a rush. Years, gentlemen. You need years with a girl. Even consider doing something like that. Meanwhile, in your 20s, you're establishing yourself, saving money, getting your things right with your career, etc., etc. I nod and say, well, I'm glad things are going well and hope they continue. Then the next month, he says they're thinking about getting married in September, about 5 months away. Smack. So now we've gone from a year to 5 months. Gee, what's the rush? I asked what changed, and he didn't give me a straight answer. It was more of a, why wait? I became suspicious at this point. Well, usually when things are rushed, it's usually because the girl's rushing it, and it's usually because she has a bun in the oven. The following Monday, he said they want to get married in the next week or two. Smack, smack, smack. Oh my God. The hell's the rush? Again, I asked what changed and what's the rush, and he gave me the same answer. I also noticed that she was picking up weight. Ding, ding, ding. At this point, I was convinced that she was already pregnant and they were itching to have you-know-what, and he didn't want to go against his religion. I understand and respect that, but I don't think that it should be the reason to make a lifetime commitment without having a strong foundation. Exactly. But a lot of religious folks out there, they wait to have the sex. Okay, that's their business. Fine. They choose that. And they rush into a marriage because they're just dying to hook up, and then all hell breaks loose. In some situations, that does work out and good for those people, but you all know what I mean. Rushing into any major thing in life is always a mistake in one form or another. He asked me to be a witness, and I reluctantly agreed. I know, smack. I know you disagree with him marrying that quickly, and I agree with that, but he is your buddy, and there are some points, even though you may disagree with your buddy's actions, that you're still supportive, reluctantly. So I'm not going to give you a smack for standing in his wedding, but he's the one that deserves a freaking smack. So a few days later, they go and tie the knot at the courthouse. Afterwards, we go to Pizza Hut, and they don't even cover the tab. Well, that's real nice. This is something he apologized for years later. He didn't understand proper etiquette. Come to find out, she wasn't pregnant. So, did he rush to marry her because she claimed she thought she was pregnant, and it turns out she wasn't? Or just that she wasn't pregnant at all, and she just manipulated him to rushing into the marriage? But you see, guys, right there already. In the beginning, you heard he's not confrontational, which means guys like that tend to not stand up for themselves. And also, and by the way, you can be a guy who's not confrontational, but they will stand up for themselves. But generally, guys that are not confrontational tend to not stand up for themselves. I just wanted to say that. And now he's rushing into a relationship with the first girl that really pays attention to him. Huge mistake. Fast forward a couple of years, and I come to visit Dan at he and Beth's place to watch a football game and catch up. When I get there, Dan is on all fours on the kitchen floor. I ask, what are you doing, dude? And he says, half his chores, cleaning the kitchen floor. I pause, but don't say anything because it's not my place. However, I was thinking, why are they splitting chores? By this time, Dan is working 2 jobs, 60, 70 hours a week, while Beth works 1 day a week for 8 hours. I found out that he also splits cooking duties with her. Hold on here. Your bro's working 2 jobs, 60, 70 hours a week. And this is the child prodigy who graduated high school at 16 and college at 20. Why isn't she working? And unless her 8 hours a day, she's getting paid, I don't know, $250 an hour, this is not going to work. Oh, no. Her ass should be on all fours on the kitchen floor scrubbing on football Sunday. If he's working 60, 70 hours a week, not him. But you see what happens, guys, when you don't have a spine, when you're a pushover? What did he communicate to her by rushing into a marriage with her that quickly? That she's the best shot he's got, and she's got him exactly where she wants to. Meanwhile, if he took years to get with her, that would show that he has options. This is one reason why you don't rush into relationships. It communicates to girls, you got nothing else going on, and they'll walk all over you right here. But we're just getting started on this bitch-ass behavior, guys. Anyway, fast forward 2 more years, and Dan tells me that Beth wants to go to school 2 to 3 hours away to get her master's in creative writing. Creative writing? What's she going to do with that degree? She'd be better off taking that creative writing degree and wiping her ass with it than actually what she'd get out of it. I mean, come on here. 2 to 3 hours away? Aren't they married? Who's going to pay for her to live 2 to 3 hours away? Who's going to pay for this degree? We all know the answer to that one. This is what happens when a guy doesn't lay down the law. The school is only one of 3 schools within the Midwest that offers this degree. I didn't mention that at the time. Beth still doesn't drive. Well, she can get off her ass and get her fucking license. I asked if she's going to learn to drive, and they get an apartment about halfway between. There's a nice little city about halfway. He says no, she's going to move down there and stay on campus. So this is his wife, and she's going to pick up and move. What is she going to do while she's on campus? Why are they even married at this point? But this guy's a weak, non-confrontational pushover. He's letting her walk all over him. Now, she's obviously an a-hole. You can already connect the dots there, but he's not helping himself. He's just as guilty because he's allowing this. And yes, I get shit all the time that people say, SSM, you victim blame, victim shame. Well, you know what? People, after a while, if things keep happening to them, being taken advantage of, they have to take some blame for allowing it to happen. It's called accountability. I'm told that he's a better man than me. I told him he's a better man than me. By this time, I was newly married. A couple years prior, but now my wife suggested something similar, just after we got engaged. I told her that she's welcome to go, and I want her to be happy. However, I need to bring back, because moving backwards in our living situation means moving backwards in our relationship. My wife didn't move in with her friend and actually didn't go back to school. We ended up staying engaged for probably an extra year, in part because of that suggestion. Well, good for you in your similar situation. You lay down the law with your wife. But then again, that makes me question a few things, if that's what she was talking about. But that's your story, and more on your buddy Dan here. Fast forward time, Dan is still working 60, 70 hours a week to afford this and try to visit Beth every 1 or 2 weekends. Their relationship starts to deteriorate, and she says it's because he's working so much. So Dan quits his part-time job so he can see her more. He's working, so she obviously doesn't work. Who do you think's paying her bills? And he's the bad guy here? Normally I'd be smacking a lot now, but I was smacking a lot in a story I did before this, and my hand's sore. Honest to God. As you may have predicted, the relationship got even worse. Well, of course it gets worse. Gentlemen, as I've said before, and you've all observed in these stories, when a guy starts acting like a bitch, she's going to then she'll then punish him. She'll keep testing him. It's like you act like a bitch, then she'll act like a bitch by being a bitch. So you can't stand up for yourself. But this guy's incapable of doing that. And probably how many movies has he watched thinking, I got to be that guy that does whatever she wants and she'll love me more. Does this sound like love to you? Eventually, Dan learned that Beth was falling for another guy. Shocker. This was a guy she had a class with. This broke Dan's heart. However, the other guy accused Beth of stalking him. He filed a restraining order on her and was granted it. She says the opposite happened, but the campus police and security believed him. Well, that's a reversal. They told her that she couldn't live on campus anymore once the semester was over. I asked him would they be moving to a small city halfway between his job and her school. And he said she no longer wants to pursue the degree and had a bad experience there. She wants to move back and regroup. So that money he spent on her college courses, because obviously he's paying for it, and for her to live over there, all goes up in smoke. Again, and he's just all too happy to oblige. You treat your girl well when it's reciprocated, but you don't do this stuff for someone that treats you like crap, and I have a hard time believing that she probably wasn't hooking up anyway. During the worst of this turmoil, he was at my place 3 to 4 times a week for a month or two. 1 to 2 times a week was fine, but every other day was a little much considering our firstborn was an infant and the wife and I just relocated. We moved back to our metro area after a couple hours away for 10 years. However, he was always there for me, so I wasn't going to turn my back on him in his time of need. I told my wife to be patient and I'll help through it, and she was. Well, bro, I respect your loyalty, and I respect you wanting to help your buddy. Seriously, that's commendable, and I'm glad your wife stuck with you during that. But it sounded to me like he was being a major inconvenience. I mean, what's the saying about guests? Fish and guests stink after 3 days, but he was always at your place. I love that Benjamin Franklin line, or something along those lines. This guy needed you to give him a good verbal smack in the head about what's going on. But maybe at the time you weren't kind of aware of a lot of these things. I don't know. But when you have guys behaving in a way he's behaving, you want to be there for him. You want to be their friend, but you can't just there them all the time. You got to tell them some things they don't want to hear, and give them a good verbal and sometimes physical smack upside the head, which is I do for you guys here. Because otherwise, they're going to keep doing the same stupid thing that makes their life. What's worse? You tearing him a new one, give him a dose of reality, or him continuing down this path to be taken advantage of and hurt? Well, you're going to see. The second attempt at school and separation. He says here, anyways, things were better, but not much once she moved back. Shocker. Eventually, she decided to get some sort of certification on web design or something similar. However, the class she found was 2 hours away, but it was only a couple times a week. She learned to drive in this period and drove back and forth there. She finished her certification and got her first full-time job that I can remember. He paid $15,000 for her to go on his credit card. Her thanks for him doing that was to say that she's no longer in love with him, and they separated. So after all that, him paying the bills for her one semester for her creative writing thing, and then now this 15 grand for her certification for web design, and she's like, oh, don't need you anymore, we're done. There you go. If all the other things weren't assigned to part ways, this is it. This was his chance. God gave him this chance. It's over. Well, what do you think happens? She moved out, and the first moving with her mom, and then she got her own place soon afterwards. She also decided to get a part-time job. I found it ironic that she only worked 8 hours when she was with him, but now she can work 60 to 65 hours a week without him. I mentioned this to him. There you go. While they were estranged, I vaguely remember his boss, a woman nearing retirement, offered to hook him up with her niece. A smoking hot 25-year-old gal I couldn't imagine any single heterosexual guy turning down for the first date. He met the girl and was intrigued, as any man would be, but didn't pursue things as he still had feelings for his estranged wife. Smack, smack, smack. She left. That was the greatest gift she ever gave this guy. I get they were married. I get there's feelings there, but come on, she's terrible to him. And by the way, if they're separated, he shouldn't be getting involved with some other woman. He needs to heal himself big time. Anyway, after about 6 months to a year, Dan and Beth reconciled, moved back in. Smack. He had his chance. Since they lived together, Beth didn't need to work both full-time and part-time anymore, so she put in her notice for her part-time job. They wanted her so bad they offered to give her a raise from $25 an hour to $45, so she earned more working 25 hours a week part-time than she would have at her full-time job. So she resigned from her full-time job instead. These jobs wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for him charging $15,000 on a credit card. Now, if he had any balls, he would have said, we're not getting back together. Well, he should have done that. But if we are, fork over the money. You're paying me the $15,000 I put on my card to help you. What he should have done was he should have divorced her ass, and then he could have probably said with his lawyer, hopefully, look, all the money I spent on her, she's making this money now. I deserve something from that. Who knows what would have happened, but fast forward a few years ago, 5 or so, and things are going good. They got a house together, discussed children, but didn't have any. Thank the Lord they don't have kids. And are in a much better financial position. He asked me a lot of questions about children, as 2 or now 3 kids were born. Beth was the only woman of our female friends that didn't hold nor have a basic understanding of babies. For example, one day our second-born clapped for the first time, and we all celebrated as parents do whenever their kids do anything or have a milestone. She said, "Oh, he's just learning to clap." I said, "Yeah, well, they don't come out knowing, you know." She seemed shocked. She generally looks scared to hold babies. Well, you know what? I'm not going to condemn her for that because I'm scared to hold babies. People give me babies. I got friends with kids, guys, and I'm literally holding a baby like this, freaking out that the baby's going to barf on me or piss on me or something. I like little kids, but no babies for me. Anyway, I'd be concerned if she ever became a mother because I couldn't see her raising a child. The only woman I know where I don't see a maternal instinct. Around the winter of 2020, Beth tells Dan she no longer identifies as a she, but now a they, and says that she's non-binary. Can't make this shit up. Furthermore, she's demisexual and polyamorous. I asked him what that meant, and he explained that Beth wants to develop deep, not just as sexual relationships with multiple people, regardless of gender identity. I'd say, okay, sweetheart, have a blast. And by the way, we're done. Unfortunately, back to the non-confrontational Dan, what do you think happens? Dan reluctantly agrees, smack, and didn't tell me or anyone else for months. She wanted to start by going out with another person, who happens to be born a man, but also identifies as a they. He allows it, but says no touching. Again, when a man doesn't stand up for himself and allows himself to be walked all over, women will lose respect for him, treat him like crap, and it'll get worse and worse. You've seen this, gentlemen, how she treats him worse and worse and worse, because she knows no matter what she does or what she says, he'll always be there to say, yes, I'd like some more. Every time. After a few months, the other guy sees that Dan is uncomfortable and breaks it off with Beth out of respect for Dan. He remains friends with Beth and becomes friends with Dan. The dude doing his wife, who calls himself a they, is now friends with Dan. What the hell, Dan? Beth flips on Dan, saying that he is restricting her and being controlling. Dan is anything but restricting and controlling of Beth. Good Lord. But, of course, twist things around. If he doesn't get with the program, then she'll leave. Please leave. Also, the other person, a guy, is in a polyamorous relationship with another chick that was born a female. He appears to be the leader of the group of 6 who are non-binary and poly. 4 chicks and 2 dudes. Allegedly, he never slept with Beth. Sure. Just like the guy in college, huh? Soon after, Beth goes out with another person, a guy, who identifies as a they. This time, Beth breaks every rule that her and Dan agreed upon and would tell Dan afterwards. Shocker. Why would she agree to any rules? There's no consequences. Dan got to the point that he didn't want to even hear about it, but Beth insisted on being transparent. Dan said he only wanted to know if his health was at risk. At some point around September 2021, Beth stopped sleeping with Dan. Dan invites people over to watch football for his birthday in October, and Beth is noticeably missing. Dan says that Beth is sick. Turns out Beth caught COVID sleeping with the second guy for 4 days before the birthday. So, bro, intermission here. How have you not slapped the shit out of Dan at this point? I'm sure we're all wondering this. I'm sure all you guys around the world are just screaming, if you're still watching this at this point. Dan needs a royal slapping, a verbal slapping. I know you're loyal, and I respect that, but good Lord. And my opinion, you can be loyal and supportive to a friend who's digging his own hole, but there's a point if it starts affecting your life. I mean, I'm sure you don't want to hear all this drama all the time. He needs to hear this. He needs to hear he's screwing up and can't allow her to do this and walk all over him. He's just causing more pain for him. Maybe Dan deep down enjoys the pain. I don't know. Anyway, it says the next few months are turbulent. Oh, because their whole marriage hasn't been turbulent? And Beth moves out around December 2021 and moves into a compound about an hour or so away. In the city, they should have moved to when she went back to school. The compound is like a shared space where 6 people who are non-binary reside and share living expenses. Fine, you can have all these dumbasses live together. They can knock themselves out. At this point, Dan's mom is encouraging him to move on along with the majority of his friends, including me. There you go. Over Christmas, me, Mike, and the 2 other friends have an intervention of sorts with Dan to encourage him to move on. So this intervention, was Dan in the middle and you all took your turn smacking some sense in him? Because he needs he's had the stupid smacked out of him. I know this is your bro, but you wrote this story to me knowing darn well how I was going to react. Anyway, Dan eventually tries to move on. Well, try not, do or do not, there is no try, Master Yoda. But he doesn't think he'd find anyone else. Well, if he works on himself, he will find someone else. But he shouldn't be with someone else right now. He needs to be alone and fix himself. In December 2021, he tried to hit on one of the girls in the group of 6 that Beth was with, but was gracefully rejected. In 2022, he eventually developed a crush on a coworker. The coworker was a mid-40s lady who seemed nice, but his grandma and considers Dan a decade younger than her, with no children, and as you can imagine, she didn't think they'd be a match. Dan was angry that another coworker told her about Dan's crush on her, and Dan was then rejected by a fairly attractive chick in her mid-20s. Dan's my boy, but I think she was a bit out of his league. He was looking for someone to land before officially divorcing, in my opinion. Dan is too worn down to be involved with anybody right now. He needs to be single and probably watch my channel and other channels 5 videos a day, every day for a year, hitting the gym, exercising, fixing himself, discussing with you these things before he should consider dating other women. And the problem is that guys split up from their awful wives, and then women reject them, and they think, well, that's how it is, so I'll just go back to my awful wife because at least it's better than nothing. I guarantee you, Dan works on himself. He'll be a totally different man in a year. But he should not be with his wife. My wife and sister want him to get a makeover because he dresses a lot older than he is. Dan can get the best makeover ever. It doesn't make a difference what he looks like on the outside if the inside is still the same. If he's still a weak pushover who has no respect for himself and lets people walk all over him, he could be walking around in a freaking Gucci suit. It doesn't make a difference. My sister has been wanting to hook him up with one of my wife's friends, which I wouldn't be opposed to if he actually was divorced and not separated. No. Bad idea. Do not let your wife or his sister or your sister or somebody's sister hook him up with somebody that you know. It's a bad idea because these things aren't going to go well, and he shouldn't be dating now. He needs to work on himself. Anyway, he spoke to a divorce lawyer in 2022. Thank you, Jesus. Finally, Dan's doing something right here. And consider refinancing the home in his name. He's determined to keep the home. He does have a nice customized man cave. He started the refinance process. But I also smacked him because I told him that he needed to make sure that it's just because refinancing takes her off the mortgage and may not take Beth off the deed of the home. Correct. Meaning that she still owned half the house. But is financially responsible for none of the home if he would have completed the refinance. When he spoke to the lender, they verified what I thought and said the only way to take her off the deed was to have it split as part of the divorce decree. Side note, he says, I sold mortgages for a couple of years and I encountered a few messy situations with divorces. Beth was willing to give up her share of the home because she now earns more than Dan and wouldn't want to have to pay alimony. Well, if anybody deserves alimony, it's Dan, after all the bullshit that he's been through. As of now, Dan still hasn't filed for divorce. Dan, file for fucking divorce. He decided a month or 2 ago to try to date his wife. Smack. Oh, because it worked out so well before. She's a changed person. Sure. Beth has admitted some of the mistakes she's made. Some. But refuses to be monogamous. Any reconciliation would include her remaining poly. Cake and eat it too. Beth knows darn well her perception of Dan, and it's accurate, is that Dan is weak. Dan's a pushover. She can have her way with Dan. If she holds her cards a little longer, he'll cave. So, of course, she's demanding that she gets to still be poly. Cake and eat it too. If Dan stays with her after all this, Dan deserves everything that happens to him. Sounds harsh. You may not want to hear it. Dan may not want to hear it. But I think the majority of guys out there will agree with me. Dan had an option before to get rid of her. He didn't. Now he has this option here. He needs to ditch her. We're almost done, guys. I don't think there's anything that can be done to help Dan until he sees the light on his own. I won't cut him off because he wouldn't cut me off if the shoe was on the other foot. Also, despite me disagreeing with his choice, I respect his right to make the choice. He's been a good friend to me, and I appreciate that. He's come to my kids' birthday events, my birthday events, helped me with multiple moves. He's always been there for me when I needed him. So that is the end of the story. So now here's the part where I'm going to speak my mind, as if I haven't done it already. Brother, you need to have Dan watch this video, and it's going to pain him to do so. You may have to tie Dan down to a chair and freaking scotch tape his eyelids open and make him listen to the story for him to hear the freaking truth. I'm sure Dan's an awesome guy. I'm sure we'd all think he's a nice guy, but we'd all want to smack him for being this foolish and weak. This woman is awful, and his weak behavior of being a pushover and a doormat and making her the freaking center of his universe has caused her to treat him worse and worse and worse. It's like going down the toilet bowl. He cannot stay married to her. He needs to divorce her immediately. And if that means you're very blunt and harsh with your words, you're doing him a favor. And then I hope he has the good sense to get rid of her. Dan, if you're listening, your life will go on. She's terrible for you, but you're in your early to mid-30s. You got a whole lot of living to go on. So even though you've been fucking up royally all this time, and you have, if you're honest with yourself, you still can turn things around. All guys can turn around a shitty situation. They just have to be brave enough to imagine a different life. She's a terrible person, okay? Move on. Hooking up with other dudes, lying, cheating, all these things, you don't deserve that. No guy does. No person does. So end it with her. Speak to a lawyer and talk to every lawyer in town. That way she can't go to those lawyers. And move on. Whatever hit you may take, take it. It's worth it. And then move on. But no dating. No freaking dating. You need to work on you need to watch my channel videos every day. And other channels like mine. Read books of self-improvement, self-help. Join a gym, work out. You'll feel better getting exercise. You can do that makeover shit that your wife's talking about, clothes and all later. He's got to work on himself. Who he is in here. Doesn't make a difference he's walking around with a Gucci suit on with a $20,000 Rolex on his wrist. It doesn't make a difference. If he hasn't changed in here, it doesn't make a difference what he looks like out here. Work on the inside out. And then one day you're going to be all right. And you got to learn to stand up for yourself, not be pushed around. And we can dig deep of what his family life was like and all that. But at the end of the day, Dan has the choice either having the rest of his life be like this, which you know darn well he's not happy, or making a change. All of us can make a change. We just have to be brave enough to take the first step. So, bro, that's what I have to say to Dan. That's what I have to say to you. You need to lay it on him. Otherwise, because there's a point you're going to be just sick and tired of hearing all these stories. You must be sick of it at this point. I sure as hell will be. I guarantee there's going to be guys watching this channel saying, dude, cut them off. You don't need this drama in your life. And I can't blame them. But it sounds like the drama is here and there, but life's too short. So I wish Dan the best, and I wish you the best. But if the second this starts really impacting your life, like your marriage, if it's a good one, or your own peace, then that's a point you got to draw some boundaries yourself. But you've been hearing this shit for years, bro. You don't need to hear this stuff anymore, so help him. The best way you can help him is being brutally honest and letting him hear it. And give him some good smacks because he fucking needs it. And you said other friends and people have been jumping in for intervention. He needs this. But if he refuses to listen to you and anybody else and keeps down this path, you can't feel bad for him. Because there's a point that we're all accountable for our actions. If we're not accountable for our actions, we're just as bad as these dumbass women in these stories I cover. Okay? Because so many gals are not accountable at all. The old Jack Nicholson thing from As Good as It Gets. So anyhow, good luck with your bro. Write me down the road. Let me know how things go. I really wish the best for both of you. You can do it. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let this guy know what you think. Let this guy know what you think. Let Dan know what you think. All that. And hopefully we can help another lost brother. But he has to help himself. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.